Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Police have arrested a prime suspect in the murder case of former model Abby Choi. Her former husband was arrested in Tung Chung while trying to flee the city. The police believe Choi's ex-husband and his father were responsible for the murder and that the motive for killing Choi was related to a financial dispute. Timothy Lee has the story.
This afternoon, Alex Kwong, the ex-husband of victim Abby Choi, was arrested by the police in Tung Chung. He was attempting to escape in a boat and is now being held at the Hung Hom Divisional Police Station as part of further investigations. More details have now emerged about the suspected murder case. Abby Choi, a 28-year-old former model and daughter-in-law of the founder of the Tom Jai Yunnan Mission fast food chain, was first reported missing on Tuesday, before her dismembered remains were later found inside a rental unit. In the Long Mei Village crime scene in Tai Po, officers found the victim's legs stored inside a fridge as well as pots of soup containing human tissue on the premises. A 7-seater vehicle suspected to have been used for disposing of the body was also seized by the police.
There are also other body parts are missing. So we believe, for example, the torso area, the hand, we are still looking for the head.
As of this morning, police can still be seen outside the flat where the dismembered corpse of Abby Choi was found. Choi was believed to be on the way to visit her daughter she had with her ex-husband on Tuesday before she vanished. She was last seen wearing a white outfit on Tai Po's Fortune Road. Sources say that Choi previously hired her ex-husband's older brother as her personal driver. After interrogating the parents and brother of Choi's ex-husband, the police discovered that the family committed the suspected murder due to a financial dispute and were unhappy with how Choi handled her financial assets. They then rented a flat in Tai Po's Long Mei Village, where they stored tools including meat grinders, chainsaws, and other items used for dismembering her body. The police believe that the murder was masterminded by the father, a former police sergeant, adding that the family provided misinformation to derail the investigation. This afternoon, police divers were deployed to the area by the Cheung Kwan Old Chinese Permanent Cemetery to search for the missing remains of the victim, after the perpetrators reportedly disposed of several body parts there. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
A friend who knew the victim, Abby Choi, for 10 years told TVB News that she had a row with the ex-husband's family over the sale of a luxury property in Ho Man Tin. She added the victim was a person who cared a lot about her family. Jackie Lin reports.
Money and the luxury property are what allegedly drove the murder of Abby Choi. The point of contention, a property at Kadoorie Hill in Ho Man Tin that Choi planned to sell. It's understood Choi bought the apartment under the name of her ex-father-in-law, who did not want to sell the property. While she had promised to resettle her former husband and his family elsewhere, disputes ensued. As listed on the real estate website, even the smallest flats at Kadoorie Hill are priced to the tune of $60 million. Police sources added Choi and her current husband did not register their marriage, meaning her assets could be inherited by her 2 children with her ex-husband. Before the arrest of Choi's ex-husband, the victim's friend of 10 years, Mrs. Powell, offered a huge reward for whoever found the suspect. Mrs. Powell told TVB News that she heard from Abby how she and her ex-husband's family had a row over the Kadoorie Hill flat. While Abby thought it was just an investment decision, the family were unhappy about selling the place where they're living. Mrs. Powell said Abby had offered financial help for the ex-husband and his family for a long time, and that she even hired his brother to be her driver. And that's all because she trusted them. It's understood Choi's ex-father-in-law was a police sergeant more than a decade ago. In 2005, he was arrested on suspicion of rape. Reportedly, the ex-husband had been wanted by police since 2015 over suspected cases of scams involving more than $5 million. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
In other news now, Financial Secretary Paul Chan said consumption vouchers are designed to bolster the economy in its initial stage of recovery, but it's not feasible to keep dispersing them over the long term. This as the city's fiscal deficit is expected to hit a worse than expected $139 billion, and that is taking the reserves down to about $820 billion. On that, Paul Chan said the government will strike a balance between spending and saving money. Chan said the government would continue to put the well-being of citizens ahead of reducing its deficit. 8 people were sentenced to up to 4 years and 9 months in jail for rioting. That's in relation to the Polytechnic University siege in 2019 during the anti-government protest. In November 2019, crowds gathered near Nathan Road and Waterloo Road, and over 250 petrol bombs were hurled. Police arrested more than 200 people that night, who was later grouped into 17 separate cases. The court noted the clash caused public nuisance and traffic disturbance at the time, adding the protesters were challenging the rule of law. The judge used a 5-year jail sentence as the starting point, but considering the defendants' young age, the fact that they have no criminal record and guilty pleas, their jail sentences were reduced by 3 months. The police added that 1/3 of the people arrested on the night of the siege have been found guilty of rioting. Friday marked the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky paid tribute to his compatriots who fought on the front lines as displays of anti-war solidarity took place across the world. The US announced further sanctions on Russia, and its G7 allies reiterated their support for Kiev. Dan Orell tells us more.
At a ceremony in Kyiv's St. Sophia Square marking the 1-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky bestowed medals on soldiers and the mother of one killed. In a televised address, Zelensky said Ukraine has withstood all threats, including shelling, cluster bombs, cruise missiles, kamikaze drones, blackouts and cold, and that his country will do everything to gain victory this year. He also attended an online summit with US President Joe Biden and other leaders of the group of 7 industrialized nations. Following the online summit, Washington announced a new $2 billion package of military aid for Ukraine and a raft of additional sanctions and tariffs. Among the steps were placing visa restrictions on Russian military members, freezing assets of allies of Russian President Vladimir Putin, and effectively banning aluminium imports from Russia. G7 members Canada and Britain unveiled similar measures. World landmarks were lit up in the colours of Ukraine's national flag as people across the globe threw their support behind Kyiv on the anniversary. The Empire State Building and Sydney Opera House gleamed in yellow and blue in solemn remembrance of the outbreak of the war. Demonstrations and vigils against Russia's invasion also took place globally. Meanwhile, the United Nations Security Council met to mark the 1-year anniversary of Russia's invasion. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called for preventing further escalation of the conflict in Ukraine and giving peace a chance.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine is a blatant violation of the United Nations Charter and international law. It has unleashed widespread deaths, destruction, and displacement. Attacks on civilian and civilian infrastructure have caused many casualties and terrible suffering.
Guterres stressed the path of diplomacy and accountability as the road to a just and sustainable peace. Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, condemned Western countries led by the United States for using the Russia-Ukraine conflict to gain their own interests. Nebenzia said that while Russia and Ukraine suffered losses from the conflict, defense industry enterprises in the West made excessive profits. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned the Security Council that it should not be fooled by any calls from Russia for a temporary or unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine.
Russia will use any pause in fighting to consolidate control over the territory it's illegally seized and replenish its forces for further attacks.
Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba told the Security Council that any new peace proposals should be aligned with the demands made by the General Assembly. The Security Council has held dozens of meetings on Ukraine in the past year, but has been unable to take any meaningful action because Russia is able to wield a veto. Dan Orell, TVB News.
Following China's release of a 12-point plan to bring ceasefire and peace to Ukraine, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky said he wants to meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. But Zelensky also said success would depend on actions, not words. Tracy Furness has more.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Friday that he'd like to meet the Chinese President Xi Jinping and that China's thoughts on the Ukraine crisis is not bad. China has shown its thoughts. I believe that the fact that China started talking about Ukraine is not bad. The question is, what will follow the words? Zelensky said at a press conference on the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of his country. The United Nations said China's 12-point peace plan was an important contribution.
The plan put forward by the Chinese government is an important contribution. I think the call on the need to avoid the use of nuclear weapons is particularly important.
Addressing a United Nations Security Council briefing on Ukraine Friday, Dai Bing, charge d'affaires of China's permanent mission to the United Nations, said that the sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity of all countries must be guaranteed. Security is not an exclusive right enjoyed by only some countries. The security of one country should not be pursued at the expense of others. Strengthening or even expanding military blocs will only undermine regional security and will never bring about peace. Meanwhile, German government spokesman Wolfgang Büchner said the Chinese proposal contained several important points, but was missing a key one. First and foremost, the withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Chinese firms were already providing non-lethal support to Russia. But U.S. President Joe Biden said there's no evidence that China is arming Russia in its war against Ukraine.
There's no evidence of that so far. And by the way, I had a long conversation with Xi about this in the summer.
Biden made the comments Friday after U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, warned China against siding with Russian President Vladimir Putin in this war. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Welcome back to TVB News. Secretary for Health Lo Chung-mau said the city's smoking rate may rise after the removal of the mask mandate. He insisted the proposed raise in cigarette tax in the latest budget is necessary, adding authorities will think of more ways to step up tobacco control.
Financial Secretary Paul Chan proposed in his latest budget that the duty on cigarettes be increased by 60% per stick. That means the price of a typical packet of cigarettes has risen to about $78. Currently, the city's smoking prevalence rate stands at 9.5%, a figure the Health Secretary says is likely caused by the mask mandate.
With the removal of the mask, we will anticipate that there may be a possibility of rise of smoking. Over the last 3 years, the mask has helped us not only in controlling the COVID, but also in reducing the number of smoking. I'm glad to see that since the introduction of the rise of tobacco tax, we are seeing a rise in the number of calls coming into the hotline to quit smoking.
Low added the objective is to reduce the smoking rate to 7.8% by 2025, adding raising tobacco tax cannot and will not be the only way to control smoking.
Making smoking less attractive, less convenient by increasing the area of the non-smoking area, restricting the smoking area, and also in reducing the attractiveness of the packages of the smoking.
As for when the mask mandate will be completely lifted, the health minister said he is reviewing figures and will relax the rule at an appropriate time. He added mask wearing will likely remain compulsory for places such as hospitals. Meanwhile, Low said the hospital authority must dig deeper into the incident of a surgical light that fell from the ceiling of an operating room in a hospital a week ago.
The quality and safety of medical devices are of high importance. And when we are using these devices in the operating theatre in particular. Now, this particular operating theatre light is actually manufactured in Sweden and actually also maintained by the company. If this manufacturer and the maintenance contractor cannot provide a satisfactory answer to all this, ensure that this will not happen, the hospital authority will have to seriously consider whether to trust this manufacturer and maintenance contractor anymore.
Low added the hospital authority has the ultimate responsibility to ensure a safe working environment for staff. The government has issued a statement expressing strong disapproval and rejection of the smearing against the situation in the city by the U.S. Consulate General in Hong Kong. A government spokesman said the Hong Kong SAR government has been fully implementing the principles of one country, two systems in accordance with the Constitution and the Basic Law. He said the government firmly rejects any false accusation or smearing in respect of the Hong Kong SAR affairs by the U.S. government and its Consulate General in Hong Kong. The spokesman said the government strongly urges the U.S. to immediately stop acting against the international law and interfering in the affairs of the SAR. A new drug for treating a rare muscle wasting condition known as spinal muscular atrophy (SMA) has been listed in the hospital authority's drug formulary. Called Evrysdi, the oral drug offers palliative treatment for people suffering from the neuromuscular disorder by helping the body produce more functional proteins and improve the function of muscles. People suffering from the lifelong disorder may experience progressive weakness in the muscles of their arms, legs, and even respiratory system. The current number of children in the city diagnosed with SMA is around 30. Medical authorities reiterated that those with the condition should receive treatment as soon as possible, as it could significantly improve patients' muscle health. Overseas, more than 120,000 California homes and businesses were without power on Friday as a powerful winter storm hit the state. Projected temperatures of 3 degrees Celsius will see the city at its coldest since 2009. This report from NBC News.
Snow near Santa Barbara, whiteout conditions in Napa Valley's wine country, and hail in Los Angeles. Tonight, some of California's most iconic cities now picturesque for this rare reason, a brutally cold winter storm paralyzing the region.
I've lived in Los Angeles my whole life, and I haven't seen any snow since the late 50s when I was a kid.
After the National Weather Service issued its first blizzard warning for the LA mountains in some 35 years, sunny San Diego followed suit with their first blizzard warning in history. With snow falling near San Francisco today,
it's really bizarre. It's fun.
The Santa Cruz Mountains were covered in a blanket.
It's still snowing pretty heavy. Got multiple inches of snow.
Triggering treacherous travel, the Sierras had more than 16 inches in 24 hours. Compare that to the slow snowfall in Minneapolis, 13 inches in 3 days. From the mountains,
the water spout, check that out,
to the coast, extreme weather and freezing conditions dumping snow, rain, and hurricane-force winds across an unusually frigid, waterlogged region.
The World Health Organization is working with Cambodian authorities after 2 confirmed human cases of H5N1 bird flu were found among one family in the country. A WHO official described the situation as worrying due to the recent rise in cases in birds and mammals. On Thursday, Cambodian authorities reported the death of an 11-year-old girl due to H5N1. They began testing 12 of her contacts. Her father has also tested positive for the virus. The WHO said it was not yet clear whether there had been any human-to-human transmission. That's the news. Thanks for watching.